All right, everyone. Well, it's 7 o'clock and we like to start on time. So thank you for coming to tonight's program. My name is Matt Binder. I am the adult program coordinator here at the Schaumburg Township District Library. To start with my pronouns, they are he and him. And that's exactly what we're talking about tonight. Our pronouns, understanding their importance. It is something that people have lots of questions about. And we thought we would bring in people from the Kenneth Young Center to talk about this important topic. If you have questions, please put them in either the Q&A box or the chat, whichever one is most comfortable for you. We will read the questions anonymously, so feel free to ask questions. And Cole and Ty will do their best to answer them. And speaking of Cole and Ty, they're here with me today, and I'm going to hand it over to them. Cole and Ty, take it away.
Awesome. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for being here. We are here to present on pronouns. So our pronoun 101, that's what they said, understanding pronouns and their importance. So we will get started here. So to start off, your presenters, my name is Cole. My pronouns are he, him, and I am joined by my co-host.
Hello, my name is Ty. My pronouns are she, her, and I am part of the District 62 with Kenneth Young Center. So I help students in the Des Plaines area with behavioral issues, as well as their families with various resources that they may need.
Awesome. And I forgot to mention, I work under the Community Youth Services grant at Kenneth Young Center, mostly working on life skills for youth. I work with the Q Center, as well as doing presentations, trainings, groups, a lot of different things. So tonight we wanted to hit on a couple main points that we would hope that you'll take away tonight. So one is gain a general understanding of pronouns and usage, gain a general understanding of the history of pronouns, and learn about the importance and impact of proper pronoun usage.
Okay. And then, so the next slide is understanding LGBTQ+. So what do these mean? First, we have sexuality or sexual orientation, which is an inherent and or immutable, enduring emotional, romantic, or sexual attraction to another individual. And then we have gender, which is the innermost concept of oneself, such as male, female. It can be a blend of both, or it can in fact be neither. This is how individuals perceive themselves and what they call themselves. One's gender identity can be the same or different from their sex assigned at birth.
So going into gender then, so some questions to ask yourself. 1, how do I see myself? 2, how does the medical community label you? 3, how do other people perceive your gender? And 4, how do you want to display your gender? So going in, starting number 1, myself personally, I identify as a cisgender male, meaning I identify with the sex I was assigned at birth. And so going into then, what does the medical community label you? You may notice I just said sex assigned at birth. So typically the medical community uses these 3 main gender markers, so male, female, and intersex to assign a sex at birth. So then how do other people perceive your gender? So maybe you've heard before somebody say, you know, is that a boy or a girl? They're wearing a lot of pink, so I'm guessing a girl. But, you know, of course, we know, in fact, anybody can wear pink. It's not attributed to one single gender. So that goes into how do you want to display your gender, gender expression. So again, for example, myself identifying as a cisgender male, I may do things that are typically seen in society as feminine or female. So I may paint my nails, or on some days I may wear a little bit of makeup on my face because I want to, you know, cover up a pimple or whatever. So those are things that maybe are seen in society as typically feminine or female, but that doesn't necessarily mean that's how I feel or identify. It is just a form of expression. So in sum, it's best practice to not assume other people's gender identity, no matter what their medical records say or how you interpret their appearance.
And then leading off of that, next we have sexuality. And then 2 questions we want you to focus on is 1, on a spectrum, to what level do you experience sexual, emotional, and romantic attractions? And then 2, what attributes do you find yourself attracted to, if any at all? So for instance, we have this nice little quadrant. So if we're looking at the y-axis, it can be viewed from a range of 0 for the aromantic to a scale like ranging to 100, which would be romantic. So you can have 0 attraction or romantic attraction to another individual, or you can have 100% attraction romantically to someone. And then same with the x-axis, you can have 0 sexual attraction to someone else. And then looking at the other spectrum, you can have 100% sexual attraction. So therefore, depending on where you fall, it can range from anywhere from all of these together, or you can be more so in the middle of one. It just depends and varies for each individual. And then for example, I will tell you for myself. So for example, I'm in a romantic and sexual relationship. So therefore I would fall in the quadrant that is going to be on the upper right-hand portion of your screen, to give you an example. And then in sum, there are many more orientations beyond gay and just straight. It's best practice not to assume anyone's sexuality or that they even experience sexual attraction. Just let them tell you when it's time.
Yeah, so starting to talk about pronouns here then. So we have some examples of some binary pronouns, binary meaning typically along the societal line of male or female, she, her, hers, he, him, his. You may have heard these a lot. They're probably one of the more known and used ones. And then you have some examples of non-binary pronouns, they, them, theirs, and then some neo-pronouns, which are also non-binary, but a little bit more nuanced, but they're also not that entirely new. They've been around since even like the 1800s, we've seen. And so em, ear, zism, zir, those are more formal pronouns for if you would rather use like instead of Mr. or Mrs., those are more used for a gender neutral alternative. So in sum, it's hurtful to assume or ignore someone's pronouns. Asking what pronouns do you use is a simple way to build trust and respect, as well as outwardly expressing what pronouns you use. So introducing yourself like we did. Hello, my name is Cole. My pronouns are he, him. It opens up that door for conversation and lets the other person know that you are open to the conversation and someone they can open up to.
Okay. And then just to get a little practice, we have a little scenario, and I'm going to read that to you. You're in a waiting room, and while you're at your doctor's office, you see a cell phone on one of the seats. You pick it up and you ask everyone, is anyone missing blank phone? So here I want you to put in or think about the correct pronoun that would fit in this scenario. So I'm going to give everyone about 10 seconds. Okay, so if your answer was there, then you are absolutely correct. This would be grammatically correct. And the overall idea of this is, while referring to people with they, them pronouns might seem confusing, just don't overcomplicate it because it's nothing new.
So why is proper pronoun usage important? So more youth are identifying as LGBTQ+ than ever, and this data is from GLAAD's 2017 Accelerating Acceptance Survey. So it shows that in the 18 to 34 category, 20% identified as LGBTQ, and even in the 72+ category, 5% identified as LGBTQ+. So in sum, trends show that more Americans will start openly identifying as LGBTQ+ with time. And this doesn't mean that people today are more likely to be LGBTQ+. It means that accepting environments allow people to be more open and safely talk about who they are and who they love. So even having opportunities like this to have this conversation openly allows people to feel more comfortable expressing that.
And then in relation to that, it's extremely important to just understand the health disparities. Statistically, LGBTQ plus youth are nearly 2 times more likely to be bullied at school and electronically. They're 2 times more likely to experience sexual or physical dating violence, smoke cigarettes, drink alcohol before the age of 13, experience what marijuana is, and have sexual intercourse before the age of 13 as well. And then in addition to that, LGBTQ plus youth are nearly 3 times more likely to be forced to have a sexual intercourse, seriously consider suicide, create a suicide plan, attempt suicide, make suicide attempt resulting in hospitalization, dabble in heroin use as well as methamphetamines. And it's extremely important that if you know someone is struggling in any of these areas, please refer to the number that is above, because it is a 24-hour hotline and it could just save that individual's life.
So transgender and non-binary youth who reported having pronouns respected by all or most people in their lives attempted suicide at half the rate of those who did not have their pronouns respected. So let's play some pronoun trivia. So the first question we have here is, what century can the earliest use of they as a gender neutral personal pronoun be traced to? So we'll give everybody like another 10 seconds to put their answer in the chat or wherever. So you see people saying C, 18th century, A, 14th century. So the correct answer is the 14th century, and that can be traced back to a French poem called William the Werewolf.
Okay, and then we have the next question, which is a bonus point. And then this question is, how far back can we find evidence of neopronouns being used? So A would be 1534, B 2003, C 1999, and then D 1800. So once again, I'm going to give you guys about 10 seconds to write down your answer and see what you guys think.
And real quick, I know we have a message in the chat. Neopronouns are what we covered a little bit earlier, the sie, them, zir, em, ihr, the pronouns that you don't hear very often, but are a little bit more nuanced, but I think we'll soon find out they're not that new.
Okay. So the correct answer is going to be D, 1800, and this can be traced back to newspaper articles testing out new gender neutral language.
So then our last trivia question here. So of the following listed, which accepts the singular use of they as grammatically correct? Is it A, the Associated Press, B, Chicago Manual Style, C, Oxford English Dictionary, or D, the National Council of English Teachers? So we'll give people 10 seconds again. Oh, I accidentally clicked too fast. But it might surprise you. So I clicked a little too fast, but it, one of the answers is A, but it's also B and C and D. So all 4 here, except the singular use of they as grammatically correct.
And then next we have easy doable practices. And then this is important for using correct pronouns as well as switching pronouns. So some of the don'ts that we want to be mindful of is to ask someone or any individual to just be normal. We also want to steer away from that it's not grammatically correct, telling them that it's going to be really difficult for you to try to use pronouns, dwelling or overly apologizing when you accidentally misgender someone, as well as being hard on yourself as you learn. And then some of the do's that we want to incorporate in our daily lives is to ask for clarity if you need it, seek to be corrected when mistakes are made, apologize quickly, and correct yourself when you slip up, and then just simply move on. Forgive yourself as you learn and make these adjustments, And then don't be afraid to correct your peers. And then if this is something that anyone wants to dabble in and dabble in a little further, we do have individual worksheets and guidelines. So please just reach out to us through the chat separately, and we can go ahead and send you guys those specific links.
Awesome. So some pronouns and tips for creating inclusive spaces. So one, introduce yourself with your pronouns like we did when we first started. Use gender neutral language. Use a person's first name if you are unsure of pronouns. So it's best not to assume, even if someone isn't exactly comfortable expressing what pronouns they use just yet, I wouldn't just assume for them and give them pronouns that you feel like they would use. Just use their name. It's best practice. Have your name and pronouns in your email signature. So just adding it to your signature on the bottom is just kind of a simple way to kind of have passive advocacy and show that you are part of the conversation, are open to having it. And then 5 is change your Zoom name to include your names and pronouns, like you see that we have them on ours.
And then responding to someone who is inviting us in, once again, some don'ts that we want to stay away from is doubting them. We don't want to threaten them or tell their parents, because outing someone is not up to us, it's up to that very individual. And then we don't want to belittle what they're telling us. And then some do's is to thank them for sharing such personal information. And then just to genuinely feel good that they come to you and trust you with such personal information on their behalf. And then offer support, because just offering support can go a long way for someone.
So then how can you be an ally? So what does being an ally mean? I know this word is kind of thrown out there now when people hear about it. So an ally is a person who has a genuine, strong concern for the well-being of LGBTQ plus people, a person who supports and accepts LGBTQ plus people and advocates for their equal rights and fair treatment, a person who confronts challenges that LGBTQ plus people experience and believes that we face these problems in society. Heterosexism, the assumption that everyone is or should be straight. Bi prejudice, it's a harmful preconceived ideas about bisexual people. You may hear that bisexual people are promiscuous and unloyal and they're just in a phase, and you know, that's bi prejudice for sure. Trans prejudice, harmful preconceived ideas about transgender people. Heterosexual privilege, so the everyday privileges straight people have in society. So for example, the ability to display attraction or affection, holding hands to the opposite gender in public without fear of judgment or even violence.
And then how can we be an ally? So first and foremost is to stay informed. So don't be afraid to ask questions. You can do your own research, and don't be afraid to be honest about what you don't know. Next, it's always good to speak up. When you hear something offensive, say something. It can be awkward. People don't know what to say or don't want to make the situation worse, but words do hurt nonetheless. So when you speak up, it educates others and it lets them know that their words are not acceptable. And then in addition, we also want to be honest and promote visibility. So speak accurately about like family members, friends, colleagues who are LGBTQ plus. But once again, please do this if they are comfortable with you sharing their story, just once again, to avoid outing them. And then you also want to support equality. And you just want to support policies that are incorporated in schools, workplace, and other places that help protect LGBTQ plus people from any sort of discrimination. And then lastly, come out as an ally. Anyone can be an ally regardless of their sexual orientation and or gender identity.
So this is where we'll kind of open up to questions. Feel free to put some in the chat. And then while you do, we are just going to go through our services. So we'll let some questions trickle in. So we are located at 650 East Algonquin Road in Schaumburg at the corner of Quinton and Algonquin, right by Harper College. Here's some pictures of our space here. Also, feel free to follow us on social media at KYC_LGBTQ Center to follow up on our programming, our activities, our events. some of the services we offer. So we offer a LGBTQ plus smart recovery group. It's a non-clinical group, and it meets Wednesdays from 4:30 to 5:30. Our high school youth advocates for change, our YAC, meets Tuesdays from 4 to 5 p.m. It's it's virtual. The YAC is more of a high school teen hangout group where they can hang out, work on service projects for their schools, whatever they would want to do in a community. Community hours, they're Thursdays from 5 to 7 p.m. They're at our space in Schaumburg, and people can just come by, use the space, use our computer lab, play games, whatever they want to do. And then our parent and guardian support group. So we meet twice a month. We meet on the second Tuesday of the month virtually, and then the last Tuesday of the month in person, and kids are welcome to come too for that. And then a couple other more services. We offer trainings and support. We have special events like our Pride Fest in June, right over at Trickster Cultural Center, right by the library. Free and rapid HIV tests and sexual health resources. And then our Youth Experiencing Homelessness grant helps us place youth in rapid housing that are in desperate need of it. So yeah, now we'll open it up to some questions.
Okay, I'm going to start with the first question that was asked. What is intersex? Yes,
so intersex, it's something that I'll admit I'm not totally versed on, but kind of an overview of it is it's a term used for a variety of situations in which a person is born with reproductive or sexual anatomy that doesn't fit the boxes of male or female. So with this, it's more so a real physical, it's something you can really see. And so at times, doctors will perform surgeries right after birth to give a child a sex. So they will quite literally assign a sex at birth. They will either have a procedure that makes them male in terms of the anatomy of a penis or whatever, or a female, well, they'll have that kind of procedure as well. So that's what intersex is. And so that's what they kind of label them as when they're born, is they're not born with a typical anatomy, or they're not quite developed yet. And so they're going to kind of push it along.
Do they know all of these pronouns? I assume they mean transgender people.
So pronouns are always changing too. And we've actually had some people that are definitely kind of exploring new pronouns. That's the thing with the conversation. It's definitely ongoing. And as we're talking about it more, things are changing and people are kind of making it their own. And so honestly, we kind of have like a range of pronouns that we kind of already see used, like they, them, he, him, she, her. But people really, I mean, it's really just up to the individual, because it's really just about them. I mean, at the end of the day, it's what they want to be referred to themselves. So it's really just up to them. So they can kind of pick whatever they want. And we've had some people come up with some different ones that, we have to ask, even us. We were like, can you clarify, how would we use that in a sentence? And so, yeah, really, it's not about like any one council or group that came up with pronouns. It's something that's kind of ingrained in society. Even thinking about, he, him, and she, her, like, where did those come from? Eventually, at some point, somebody wanted to be referred to as he or a him or a she or her, so.
Okay. Just to go off of that, do people's pronouns change over time?
Yeah. Oh.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Individuals' pronouns can change at any point in time at which the individual wishes. So for example, my pronouns are she, her, but honestly, tomorrow I could use they, them, or she, they. It honestly, once again, just comes down to the individual. And then we overall just want to be mindful of that and just respect the individual. I mean, I understand it could be a hard concept for people to adjust to. But once again, you just have to be respectful, ask, because they can totally change from day to day if that individual wanted.
Okay. Let's bring it back to square one. And the person asking this question says this: hope I'm not being insensitive by asking this question, but being elderly now, some of this is totally new to me. So their question is, can you please explain what a transgender is?
Yeah, for sure. So a transgender person is somebody who doesn't identify with the sex they were assigned at birth. So let's say somebody was assigned male at birth, um, and so they grow up and they find out, as we all do, as we learn about, what we like, what we don't like, who we're interested in, how we see ourselves. They find out, like, I don't feel like a male, in that sense, and I feel like I'm, in my head or wherever, I feel like I'm female. So somebody who just doesn't identify with the sex they were assigned. So same thing goes for if they were assigned female at birth. They might grow up and figure out that they don't feel like a female. And honestly, they could figure it out at any point in their life. They could be young, they can be older, they could be middle age. It's really just kind of a different journey for everybody.
Ty, did you have anything you wanted to add to that?
No, I think Cole nailed that 100%.
Okay, very good. So something you had brought up before, Cole, and you, Ty, as well, was the idea that the person is asking you to respect them by calling them by their pronouns. And you also mentioned that people can make up their own pronouns.
Mhm.
When you experience that, how do you approach someone who has come up with a pronoun you've never heard of? And how do you ask them how to use that pronoun in different ways?
Yeah. So I know I've had like a youth ask me to use a different set of pronouns, and I just had to ask, um, how would you, like, can you help me use that in a sentence? How would you use that referring to yourself? And they will give me the sentence, and definitely take some practice. You kind of got to work into it a little bit sometimes. And even, it's really just kind of, if I think the main takeaway is, as long as you're trying and making the effort, because I've even had to say, like, in terms of binary pronouns, like she, her, hers, and he, him, his, how would that kind of fall along those same lines to try to help me a little bit? Even though they're not binary pronouns, my brain, everybody's brain works differently. So for me, that might help me figure it out more. But really, it's just kind of like taking the lead from them and asking them the questions. And maybe they might not have a great reaction, but I mean, I think it's all about you making the effort. We might not have a good reaction all the time, but as long as you're making the effort and really trying, then that's all you can really do.
All right. Another question here: does transgender still apply after a sex change operation?
Yes. So they will still be, well, also, it's also depends on how they want to identify, but typically in society, they would be considered, a trans man or a trans woman. So let's say they were assigned male at birth, but they transitioned to being a female, they'd be a trans woman, and vice versa. So if they were assigned female at birth and they transitioned to being a man, they'd be a trans man. And that's, yeah, typically kind of how it's societally looked at. And even in the trans community, it's typically how it's looked at as well.
Something in your slides I thought was very interesting was the idea of over apologizing for
Mhm.
getting someone's gender wrong. Can either of you just kind of describe what would be an appropriate reaction when you get it wrong and you feel really bad and you want to tell this person you feel bad, but you obviously don't also want to make this about you, the person getting it wrong? So what are ways that someone can kind of be respectful
Sure.
without making a huge scene?
So, oh, yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So kind of what the slides were saying. So if you notice that you make a mistake, kind of just correct it. And once again, you kind of want to just move on, because at the same time, it isn't about you. And then kind of like when you over apologize, you kind of lose that whole meaning of the actual apology in itself when you're doing it too much. And then the other person also feeds into that, of course. So once again, practice makes perfect, to be honest. The more you practice, the easier it will become, honestly. And so I would, yes, I mean, personally for me, for example, I have a lot of trans friends, and it took a little bit for my brain to automatically correct what it needed to say, like what it needed to be. But honestly, in the moment, if I slip up, I correct myself right away and then just move on. And they respected that, like, most of all. That was like the best thing to do. I mean, we're human after all, and we do make mistakes. But once again, it goes back to what Cole was saying. Just as long as you're trying to correct yourself and show effort in that, then that's like all that should matter to you, as well as it would be acknowledged by that other individual.
Yeah, definitely. I think kind of a funny example that I'm thinking of is kind of a stereotypical, I guess, mom kind of thing is, let's say like you're shopping with your mom, you know, for you're a little kid, whatever, like take me for example, and you're shopping with your mom for underwear, and she's sitting there, you know, is it do they fit good, are they too tight, you know, in this area, are you sure they fit good, kind of like letting it go on, and you're like, mom, you're embarrassing me, like stop, you know. And it's such a different thing if she's just like, do they fit good, and you say yes, and then they move on, kind of the same kind of thing. It's embarrassing if somebody kind of drones on and on about something, even if they have the best intentions about it. So that's just kind of a silly example.
A question here is it okay for us to correct other people's mistakes?
Absolutely. Yes, that's another part of just education. So when you kind of see or hear someone slipping up, it is absolutely okay to correct, because you're not only teaching someone else, but then you're also kind of teaching yourself and kind of ingraining in your head that no, this is wrong, and then this is how it should be. So I personally don't think it is disrespectful in any way to correct someone if they are truly wrong. For example, I've been corrected myself, and it shouldn't seem like an attack or something that is aggressive. Just someone simply, if I state the wrong pronoun, someone just simply corrects me, and I correct myself in that moment, and then just keep moving. Just keep it moving, yeah.
Okay, this one is a bit of a changing course here, but they're right. I know a parent who is letting their child decide what sex they want to be by not stereotyping dolls with girls, trucks with boys, etc. Is this confusing as they grow up?
So I honestly, my personal take on this is I don't think so. I think we, as a society, kind of label things a little bit too much on, you know, who should play with what and who should use what. At the end of the day, a doll is a doll and trucks are trucks, and you know, it really doesn't need to be attributed with a certain gender or a certain person. Really, anybody can do anything, you know. In this sense, you know, same kind of goes back to. If you know, somebody wants to wear makeup and maybe they're not female, which is kind of a societal thing, as we typically attribute male or makeup with females. But I think it's definitely just more about society placing a gender on a certain item. So I don't think it's confusing. I think if anything, it's just kind of the way the world is going right now. We're taking gender out of things a little bit more. So it's more so just kind of these objects are objects, really.
You know, thinking about what we had talked about earlier, about more people identifying as LGBTQ plus, and more people being brave in that identity and being out in that identity. And we're already talking about pronouns in the way that we are today, where it's just being respectful, asking someone how they would like to be treated, how they would like to be called. Do you think that the future of the English language is going to change as we're going to move away from a gender specific English language to a genderless English language?
Yeah, I mean, Ty, do you want to speak on that first, or?
I mean, I mean, that is it's kind of hard to say because it's always hard to predict the future. But honestly, like even looking back at, like, let's just say, even looking back at like from here to like 50 years ago, like for example, Z, Zim, Zer, like that wasn't, like back then, like it wasn't as commonly used compared to nowadays. So you can totally see over the course of time, we are changing our language that we speak, how we speak to one another on a day-to-day basis. So I definitely do think it'll change. I don't know if it'll completely change like 100% to like I don't know, like a non-binary text, but I do think that we are making headway in multiple areas when it comes to language related to LGBTQ plus.
Yeah, I mean, piggybacking off of that, I think, language has always changed and evolved. I mean, if you remember studying Shakespeare in school, we don't talk anywhere near like that anymore. And also just, and I see a question in the chat that relates to this, is this universal or just here in the US? There's plenty of languages out there in the world that are already fairly genderless. And then there are other languages like English, Spanish that do rely heavily on gender. In Spanish, it's really male and female. You have a Latino, Latina. So it really is just kind of sprinkled throughout different cultures. So yeah, in some cultures, it's not too much of a conversation even because it's just the language is already kind of genderless. So, but definitely, I think things will continue to change and evolve.
And Cole, you mentioned Spanish, and there's the movement for Latinx taking pronouns out of Spanish. Can either of you talk about Latinx and if someone sees that, what that means and how they should approach it as an English speaker?
Yeah, so Latinx, definitely just more of a gender neutral term for, you might hear like Latino people, Latin people. It's kind of another version that's more gender neutral. But, like we've talked about it in the office, is personally, I don't really resonate with it. So, I mean, it's really, again, on a person-to-person basis, but it is a nice gender neutral term. I prefer the term Latin. I identify as Latin, not for any one reason. That's just kind of how I always saw myself, the word I always used to describe myself. So that's kind of what I've stuck with. There's also a new word that's Latine, which is just an E on the end, which is also gender neutral. It's kind of a little less harsh than the X because there's not a whole lot of X's in Spanish to begin with. So that it kind of falls more in line with the Spanish language.
Something that one of our chat participants have put up here is, since my granddaughter has brought her preference out in the open, I noticed her stronger in her sense of confidence. Is that something either of you have experienced with someone who is trying pronouns out, feeling out with their family and friends and their new identity? Not new, but they're debuting this person now, their real person. Do you feel that that kind of pronoun acceptance is key for them to feel that confidence?
I mean, I personally think it's key, just because if someone specifically identifies a certain way and the people, the loved ones around them are acknowledging it, that just means that that person has so much more acceptance in their life in general. And I can totally see how it would help build her confidence as an individual. Once again, just supporting her as an individual and letting her grow and be her own person is huge to any, I mean, that would be huge to anyone. I mean, realistically, all of us want to be accepted. And when we are accepted, that's such a good feeling internally. So I am ecstatic that she has a great sense of herself.
All right.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, are there any more questions out there? If there are, please type them in to the chat or to the Q&A. We've had some great questions tonight, so I'm very happy to see. You know, Ty or Cole, are there any other things that we haven't covered tonight that maybe you'd want to expand on, or any points that maybe you'd want to go on about?
None that come to mind right now. Little blank right now, but yeah.
I think we covered, yeah, I mean, for the most part, I think we covered a lot of important information and great details. I can't think of anything else other than like if anyone had additional questions.
Okay.
Yeah, I see a question. I just want a little more clarity on it. When was this program started in schools? What program exactly? And then I see another question. I think it is hard for older people. Any advice about how to talk to them? Definitely. I mean, one way, as we talk about, just trying to meet them where they're at. So it's you know, kind of asking them even like, where are you at with this conversation? What do you even know about the LGBTQ plus community? And if they don't know anything, that's fine. It's, just kind of asking them, if they're interested in learning. If not, then, that's all right. If they are, asking them kind of what questions they have or what they're curious about learning. And just kind of definitely being patient with them, especially if they're really trying to learn and to grow their knowledge on it. Info on LGBTQ plus. There really isn't like a set curriculum in schools on LGBTQ plus. I think there is in the state of Illinois. I'm not sure if it's a requirement or what it is exactly. I have to look into it further. That the only piece that they have to add about LGBTQ plus people is in history, just kind of giving a brief in American history, brief overview of the community throughout those points in history as well. But there's not really any curriculum or trainings. We get brought into schools, but that's on behalf of each individual school and school district.
Okay. Just a reminder that on the Schaumburg Library YouTube channel, we brought in Dr. John D'Amelio, who is a professor at DePaul, and he did an excellent short history of LGBTQ activism since the 1950s to the present day. It is not complete by any means, but it is a great way to start if you want to know more about LGBTQ history. All right. Well, it looks like that is the end of our questions. So I want to thank Cole and I want to thank Ty for being brave, being here, answering our questions, and giving us some great information on how to be good people.
Yeah, of course. Thank you for having us.
Yes, thank you.
And thank you at home. Thank you for all the wonderful questions. I will have Cole send me those links so everybody gets them. I'll send them out to everyone who registered so you have a chance to see those, read those, share those. Again, if you have any questions, you can either email Cole or Donna, who was going to be here tonight, but she unfortunately could not make it. You can also email me if you have any questions, and I'd be happy to pass those on as well. All right. Thanks again for coming, and thanks to Cole and Ty. We will see you next time.
Thank you.